My name is Victoria Sterling, and despite everything I've achieved, I was never good enough for my family. But that night, everything changed. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to walk away from someone who refused to see your worth. I grew up in Saratoga Springs, New York, where old money whispers through tree-lined streets and success is measured in generations, not achievements. My father, Harrison Sterling, built Sterling Industries from a small manufacturing company into a multi-million-dollar empire. He was the kind of man who commanded rooms without saying a word, whose approval was currency more valuable than gold, but that currency was never spent on me. From the time I could walk, I knew I was different from my brother Marcus. Where he stumbled through prep school with C's and charm, I graduated valedictorian. Where he partied his way through his first year at Yale before dropping out, I earned a full academic scholarship to MIT, where he drifted from one failed business venture to another. I was building something extraordinary, yet somehow, in my father's eyes, Marcus was the heir apparent, and I was just the daughter who tried too hard. The breaking point came during my senior year of high school. I had been accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship, but we still needed $30,000 a year for the remaining cost. I remember sitting in my father's mahogany-paneled office, surrounded by portraits of sterling men who had built the family legacy. Asking for his help, Victoria, he said, not looking up from his financial reports. College is an investment. And frankly, investing in a daughter's education doesn't provide the same returns as investing in a son's future. I felt something crack inside my chest. Dad, I have a 4.0 GPA. I'm going to study aerospace engineering. MIT professors are already talking about research opportunities. Engineering? He finally looked up, his steel gray eyes filled with something between amusement and disgust. That's not a woman's field. You'll get married, have children, and all that education will be wasted money. Marcus will carry on the Sterling name and the business. That's where my investment belongs. I sat there, 17 years old, watching my father dismiss everything I had worked for with the casual indifference of someone swatting a fly. What if I prove you wrong? He leaned back in his leather chair, a cold smile playing at his lips. Victoria, you're emotional, impulsive, and you lack the killer instinct needed for real business. You'll never amount to anything significant. Save yourself the embarrassment. I stood up, my legs shaking, but my voice steady. I'll remember you said that. He had already returned to his papers. I'm sure you will. I worked 3 jobs that summer waitressing at the country club where my father's friends dined, tutoring, spoiled rich kids, and doing bookkeeping for small businesses. I saved every penny, applied for every scholarship, and took out student loans that would follow me for years. When I walked onto MIT's campus that fall, I carried nothing but a single suitcase and a determination forged in the fires of my father's. Rejection college was brutal. While my classmates worried about social events and spring break trips, I was in the library at 6 a.m. in the engineering lab until midnight. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in aerospace engineering and a minor in business. My father didn't attend my graduation, but Dr. Elena Vasquez did. She was my thesis advisor, a brilliant woman who had built her own consulting firm specializing in aerospace technologies. Victoria, she said after my graduation ceremony, I've been watching your work for 4 years. I'm starting a new venture, and I need someone with your mind and your drive. Interested? That conversation changed everything Vasquez Sterling Aerospace. Technology started in a rented warehouse in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Dr. Vasquez provided the industry connections and initial funding. I provided the innovation and relentless work ethic. Our first breakthrough came 18 months later when we developed a revolutionary, lightweight composite material that made aircraft 15% more fuel efficient. Aerospace industry noticed. Within 3 years, we had contracts with Boeing, Airbus, and NASA. Within 5 years, we were a $50 million company. Within 7 years, we were approaching $200 million in annual revenue. I had become one of the youngest female executives in the aerospace industry, featured on magazine covers and speaking at international conferences. But success in business was only part of my strategy. I'd been quietly building something else, a comprehensive understanding of every industry that intersected with my father's empire sterling. Industries manufactured component parts for various sectors: automotive, aerospace, construction, and consumer goods. They were successful, but they were also predictable, traditional, and increasingly outdated. While my father clung to the same business model he had used for 30 years, I was studying market trends, technological disruptions, and supply chain vulnerabilities. I knew his company better than he did, and I knew exactly how to break it. The call came on a Tuesday in October. My assistant, Sarah, knocked on my office door at Vasco Sterling's headquarters in Cambridge. "Victoria, your mother's online too. She says it's important." I hadn't spoken to my mother in 6 months. Catherine Sterling was a master of selective blindness, able to ignore her husband's cruelty while maintaining the perfect facade of a loving family. She called when she needed something, usually my presence at some social function, to maintain appearances. "Victoria, darling." Her voice was honey over steel. "I hope you're well. Your father and I are hosting the annual Sterling Industries Board. Dinner next Saturday. It's the company's 40th anniversary, and we're celebrating with all the major clients and board members." "That's nice, Mom. Congratulations. We'd like you to attend." I almost laughed. "You'd like me to attend a celebration of the company that represents everything Dad said I could never achieve?" "Victoria, you're being dramatic. This is about family." "Family?" I repeated, tasting the word like poison. "Tell me, Mom, how is Marcus doing? Still working his way through Dad's money?" There was a pause. Marcus's finding his path. "But this isn't about him. Your father specifically asked me to invite you." That stopped me cold. Harrison Sterling had never specifically asked for my presence at anything. Why? He didn't say. "But Victoria, he's been following your career. He knows about your success. Maybe he wants to what? Apologize? Acknowledge that he was wrong?" I felt that familiar fire building in my chest. "Or maybe he wants to parade me around as proof that the Sterling family produces winners, conveniently forgetting that. He refused to invest in that winner. Please, Victoria." One night for the family, I stared out my office window at the Cambridge skyline, at the world I built despite my father's predictions. I'll think about it, but I'd already made my decision. I was going to that dinner, but not for the reasons my mother hoped. I spent the next week preparing, not just picking out a dress or planning small talk, but orchestrating what would become the most expensive lesson in humility my father had ever received. The gift was the easy part. Harrison Sterling had always been obsessed with classic cars. His garage housed a collection of pristine vintage automobiles, each one meticulously maintained and rarely driven. His crown jewel was a 1967 Shelby Cobra that he'd spent 15 years restoring. He'd shown it to me once when I was 12, explaining every modification, every chrome detail, every leather stitch. "This," he had said, running his hand along. "The perfect blue paint is what happens when you refuse to accept anything less than perfection." I had remembered that moment, and I'd been waiting 12 years to use it. Finding the right car took 3 days of calls to specialty dealers and private collectors. But when I found it, I knew it was perfect. A 1963 Ferrari 250 GTO, one of only 39 ever made, valued at $18 million. The previous owner was a tech billionaire who had decided to liquidate his collection. The transaction took place in a private hangar at Logan Airport, cash wire transfer, no questions asked. I had the car transported to Sterling Manor the morning of the dinner party, covered in a custom silk cloth with instructions for the staff to place it in the circular driveway as a surprise. I included a note, "For a man who taught me that perfection is the only standard worth pursuing. Thank you for the lesson. Victoria," but the car was just the opening move. Sterling Manor sat on 12 acres of manicured landscape in Saratoga Springs, testament to 3 generations of Sterling wealth. As I drove up the familiar circular driveway that Saturday evening, I saw my gift sitting exactly where I had requested, still covered, waiting for its moment. The house was ablaze with lights, and I could hear the sounds of laughter and conversation drifting from the rear gardens where cocktails were being served. I had timed my arrival perfectly fashionably late enough to make an entrance, but not so late as to miss the evening's main event. I wore a black Carolina Herrera gown that cost more than my father had, refused to contribute to my education. My jewelry was subtle but expensive, a Van Cleef and Arpels necklace that had been a gift to myself when Vasquez Sterling hit $100 million in revenue. I looked like success, I felt like power, and I was ready for war. My mother met me at the front door, her face a mask of nervous excitement. "Victoria, you look stunning. Your father is going to be so pleased you came." "Where is he?" "In the garden with the board members. Harrison Industries' biggest clients are all here, the Hendersons from automotive, the Yamadas from the international division, the Kowalskis from aerospace components." I knew all those names. I'd been studying Sterling Industries' client base for years. "And Marcus," her smile faltered slightly. "Marcus is..." He had a commitment he couldn't break. Translation: Marcus was probably drunk or high or both, and my parents had decided it was easier to make excuses than to drag him to a business function where his failures would be on display. "Victoria," my mother continued, "before you go out there, I should mention that your father has been telling everyone about your success. He's very proud." I felt something sharp and cold settle in my stomach. "Proud?" "He's been bragging about your aerospace company, about how you're his daughter, how the Sterling family produces exceptional business leaders." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. 12 years of dismissal, rejection, and humiliation, and now he wanted to claim credit for my success. Now he wanted to parade me around as proof of Sterling family excellence. "I see," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Well, I suppose I should go greet the crowd." As I walked through the house toward the garden, I passed the formal dining room, where the anniversary celebration would take place. The table was set for 24 guests, with my father's seat at the head and my mother's at the foot. I noticed there was no place card for me, apparently. I was expected to sit wherever space allowed, a guest in my own family home. That was fine. I wouldn't be staying for dinner anyway. The garden party was exactly what I expected, a carefully orchestrated display of wealth, power, and influence. Sterling Industries board members and major clients mingled on the stone terrace, champagne glasses catching the light from the Japanese lanterns my mother had strung between the oak trees. I spotted my father immediately. At 58, Harrison Sterling was still an imposing figure, tall, silver-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. He was holding court near the fountain and gesturing expansively. As he told some story to a group of rapt listeners, I approached the group slowly, letting the conversations around me wash over me as I assessed the crowd. These were serious business people, the kind who made decisions that affected thousands of jobs and millions of dollars. They were exactly the audience I needed for what came next. "Victoria!" My father's voice boomed across the garden as he spotted. Everyone, I'd like you to meet my daughter, Victoria Sterling." I felt the familiar performance begin. The warm paternal smile, the proud posture, the subtle hand on my shoulder as he guided me into the circle of executives. "Victoria runs Vasquez Sterling Aerospace Technologies," he continued, his voice filled with what sounded like genuine pride. "She's built it into one of the most innovative companies in the aerospace industry. Brilliant mind, just like her old man." The executives murmured their congratulations and interest. I smiled, played my part, answered their questions about my business with the professionalism that had made me successful. But inside I was calculating, timing, preparing for the moment when I would detonate the careful illusion my father had constructed. "Harrison," said James Yamada, Sterling Industries' largest international client, "you must be incredibly proud. It's rare to see such innovation in aerospace technology." "I certainly am," my father replied, his arms still around my shoulders. I always knew Victoria had the potential for greatness. That's why I made sure she had every opportunity to succeed. There it was. The lie that would justify everything that came next. I smiled sweetly at the group. Dad, you're too kind. But I should probably clarify something for your guests. The conversations around us began to quiet as people sensed a shift in the atmosphere. You see, I continued, my voice carrying clearly in the cooling evening air. When I was 17 and accepted to MIT, I asked my father for help with tuition. He told me that investing in a daughter's education didn't provide the same returns as investing in a son's future. He said I was emotional, impulsive, and lacked the killer instinct needed for real business. He said I would never amount to anything significant. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the eyes of 24 influential business. People focused on our small group, could see the shock and discomfort on their faces as they processed what I had just revealed. My father's face had gone pale, but his grip on my shoulder tightened. Victoria, I think you're misremembering. I'm not misremembering anything, I said, gently removing his hand from my shoulder. I worked 3 jobs to pay for college. I took out student loans that I'd just finished paying off last year. I built my company without a single dollar of sterling family money. So while I appreciate you wanting to take credit for my success, I think your guests deserve to know the truth about what kind of support you provided. The discomfort in the group was palpable. These were people who understood family dynamics, who had children of their own, who were now seeing Harrison Sterling in a very different light. Victoria, my mother appeared at my elbow, her voice tight with panic. Perhaps we should. Actually, Mom, I have something for Dad, a gift to commemorate. Sterling Industries' 40th anniversary. I gestured toward the house, where the covered car waited in the driveway. I thought it was time I showed some appreciation for everything he taught me. The entire party moved to the front of the house, champagne glasses in hand, conversations. Muted and uncertain. I had orchestrated this moment perfectly. The dramatic revelation, the uncomfortable silence, and now the mysterious gift that would either redeem the evening or destroy it completely. My father stood beside me, his face a mask of confusion and barely controlled anger. He was clearly trying to figure out how to regain control of the situation, how to spin my public revelation into something that didn't make him look like a heartless patriarch. Victoria, he said quietly, I don't know what you think you're doing, but I'm giving you a gift. Dad, the kind of gift that someone who never amounts to anything significant shouldn't be able to afford. I walked to the covered car and grasped the edge of the silk cloth. The crowd gathered around, their curiosity overriding their discomfort. Even in the midst of family drama, the mysterious expensive car was still worth seeing. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, my voice carrying across the driveway, I present to you a 1963 Ferrari 250 GTO, one of only 39 ever made, valued at approximately $18 million. I pulled away the cloth with a flourish, revealing the stunning red Ferrari in all its glory. The crowd gasped. Even people accustomed to wealth were impressed by the sight of an $8 million automobile sitting in a suburban driveway. My father's face went through a series of emotions: shock, confusion, and then something that looked almost like fear. He understood numbers, understood what this gift represented. His daughter, the one he had dismissed as worthless, had just casually spent more money than Sterling Industries made in profit some years. Victoria, he said, his voice barely above. I whispered, this is too much. I can't accept. Of course you can, I said, walking over to him with the keys. After all, you taught me that perfection is the only standard worth pursuing. Remember? You said that when you showed me your Shelby Cobra 12 years ago. I placed the keys in his hand, noting how his fingers trembled slightly. This is my way of saying thank you. Thank you for teaching me that I couldn't depend on anyone but myself. Thank you for showing me that love and support have to be earned through success. And thank you for motivating me to build something so successful that I can casually spend $18 million on a gift for someone who once told me I would never amount to anything. The crowd was silent, riveted by the drama unfolding before them. I could see the wheels turning in their minds, the calculations and realizations about what they were witnessing. But here's the thing, Dad, I continued, my voice growing stronger. I didn't just buy you a car. I bought you a lesson. I reached into my evening bag and pulled out a manila envelope. The weight of it felt substantial, important, like the moment I'd been building toward for 12 years. You see, while you were busy telling people tonight about how proud you are of my success, I was busy doing something that might interest you even more. I opened the envelope and pulled out a thick stack of documents. These are the papers for the acquisition of Sterling Industries. As of 4 p.m. this afternoon, Vasquez Sterling Aerospace Technologies is the new majority owner of your company. The silence that followed was absolute. 24 successful business people, my parents, and the household staff all stared at me as if I had just announced that. I could fly dot my father's face went from pale to ashen. That's impossible. Sterling Industries isn't for sale. It wasn't. For sale, I corrected, but it was vulnerable. You see, Dad, while you were busy dismissing my potential, I was busy studying your business. I know about your declining market share in automotive components. I know about your failed expansion into European markets. I know about your aging equipment and your resistance to technological innovation. I pulled out the first document, detailed financial analysis. Sterling Industries has been hemorrhaging money for 3 years. You've been covering it up with creative accounting and by liquidating assets, but your debt-to-equity ratio is unsustainable. James Yamada stepped forward, his face grave. Harrison, is this true? My father's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He was a man who had built his entire identity around being the dominant force in any room, and now his daughter was systematically dismantling that identity in front of his most important business associates. I don't know how she got access to confidential public records, I interrupted. SEC filings, bankruptcy court documents, property assessments. You'd be amazed what's available if you know where to look and how to interpret it. I pulled out the second document. 6 months ago, Sterling Industries took out a $15 million loan from Northbridge Financial, using the company's assets as collateral. The loan terms include a clause that allows the lender to accelerate the debt if certain performance metrics aren't met. My father's breathing became shallow. He knew where this was going. Those metrics haven't been met, I continued. Sterling Industries defaulted on the loan terms last month. Northbridge Financial has the legal right to call in the debt immediately, which would force Sterling Industries into bankruptcy. I pulled out the third document. However, Northbridge Financial was recently acquired by a holding company called Sterling Acquisition Partners. And Sterling Acquisition Partners is owned by Vasquez Sterling Aerospace Technologies. The implications hit the crowd like a physical blow. I had bought my father's debt, which gave me effective control over his company. But I didn't stop there, I said, pulling out the fourth document. I also purchased the outstanding shares held by 3 of your 5 board members. Combined with my position as the primary creditor, I now control 67% of Sterling Industries. Helen! Kowalski, one of Sterling Industries' aerospace clients, stepped forward. Victoria, what exactly are you saying? I looked directly at my father, seeing the full realization finally dawn in his eyes. I'm saying that as of this afternoon, I own the company that my father said I was too emotional and impulsive to ever run. The dinner party was effectively over. The guests stood in awkward clusters, some trying to process what they had witnessed, others already calculating how this power shift would affect their own business relationships. My parents stood frozen beside the Ferrari, my father still holding. The keys to a car he now understood was not a gift, but a symbol of his daughter's complete victory. The immediate changes will be minimal, I announced to the group, my voice calm and professional. Sterling Industries will continue to honor all existing contracts and commitments. However, there will be some restructuring at the management level. I turned to my father. Harrison, effective Monday morning, you'll be transitioning from CEO to Chairman Emeritus. It's honorary position. You'll retain your office, your assistant, and a generous consulting fee, but you'll no longer be making operational decisions. You can't do this, he whispered, his voice breaking. This is my company. I built this company. And now I own it, I replied simply. Just like you own the decision to refuse to invest in my education. Just like you own the choice to dismiss. My potential. Actions have consequences, Dad. I learned that from you. I turned to address the crowd. For those of you who do business with Sterling Industries, I want to assure you that this transition will actually improve your experience. Vasquez Sterling Aerospace Technologies brings cutting-edge innovation and financial stability to Sterling Industries. We'll be modernizing equipment, expanding product lines, and implementing the kind of technological advances that will keep us competitive for the next 40 years. James Yamada stepped forward. Victoria, I have to ask, was this about business? Or was this about revenge? I considered the question seriously. It was about both. Sterling Industries is a solid company with good bones and loyal clients. Under proper management, it could be extremely profitable. But I'd be lying if I said personal satisfaction wasn't part of the equation. I looked around the group, meeting each person's eyes. How many of you have children? Most hands went up. How many of you would tell your child that investing in their education was a waste of money? How many of you would tell your daughter that she lacks the killer instinct needed for business success? The hands went down. I didn't set out to destroy my father's company, I continued. I set out to build something better than what he thought I was capable of. The fact that I was able to acquire Sterling Industries in the process is just proof that he was wrong about my potential. I pulled out the final document. This is a severance package for Harrison Sterling. It includes a substantial pension, full health benefits, and a non-compete agreement that will prevent him from working for any competitors for 2 years. It's more generous than what most CEOs receive when they're forced out. I handed the document to my father. All you have to do is sign it. My father stood in the driveway of his own home, holding the keys to an $18 million car in one hand and a severance agreement in the other. Surrounded by the business associates who had watched his daughter systematically dismantle his empire in the span of 30 minutes. Victoria, my mother said, her voice pleading, surely we can discuss this privately, as a family. We stopped. Being a family the day Dad decided that his daughter wasn't worth investing in, I replied. Tonight is just the paperwork. I pulled a Mont Blanc pen from my bag and offered it to my father. The terms are generous, Dad. You'll be financially secure for the rest of your life. You'll maintain your dignity and your reputation. All you have to do is acknowledge that sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who end up surprising you. He looked at the pen like it was a snake. If I sign this, what happens to Marcus? Marcus was never part of Sterling Industries' management structure anyway. This doesn't change anything for him. And if I don't sign? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then I'll exercise my rights as the majority owner and primary creditor. I'll dissolve the company, liquidate the assets, and put 247 people out of work. The Sterling name will disappear from the business world entirely. The threat hung in the air like smoke. My father understood that I wasn't bluffing. I had already demonstrated that I had the resources, the knowledge, and the ruthlessness to follow through on my promises. Why? He asked, his voice barely audible. Why go to all this? Trouble? You've already proven your point. Because, I said, stepping closer to him, 12 years ago, you told me I would never amount to anything significant. Tonight, I wanted to show you exactly how significant I've become. I gestured to the Ferrari, to the documents, to the crowd of influential people who had just witnessed his professional downfall. This is what happens when you refuse to invest in someone who refuses to give up. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before, genuine respect, mixed with fear and regret. You're right, he said quietly. I was wrong about you. I know, I replied. The question is whether you're ready to admit it officially. He took the pen from my hand and signed the documents without reading them. He knew he didn't have a choice. The weeks following the dinner party passed in a blur of legal paperwork, media coverage, and business restructuring. The story of a daughter buying her father's company made headlines in the business press, with journalists attempting to frame it as either a heartwarming tale of family reconciliation or a cautionary story about corporate ruthlessness. I preferred to think of it as a lesson in the power of persistence. Sterling Industries' transition to Vasquez Sterling ownership was surprisingly smooth. The employees who had been worried about layoffs and uncertainty were relieved to learn that the new ownership brought financial stability and growth opportunities. I implemented profit-sharing programs, modernized equipment, and expanded into new markets that Harrison had been too conservative to explore. Within 6 months, Sterling Industries was more profitable than it had been in 5 years. My father adapted to his new role as chairman emeritus with the grace of a man who had finally accepted defeat. He came to the office 3 days a week, reviewed reports, and offered advice when asked. He never questioned my decisions, never undermined my authority, and never again suggested that I lacked the killer instinct for business. Marcus, predictably, had a more difficult time adjusting to the new family dynamics. He called me 2 weeks after the dinner party, drunk and angry. "You destroyed him," he slurred into the phone. "You destroyed our father for what? Money? Power? Some twisted sense of revenge?" "I gave him exactly what he gave me," I replied calmly. "A chance to prove himself without any help from family. He's a broken man, Victoria. He sits in his office staring at financial reports for companies he no longer controls. He's learning humility," I corrected. "It's a valuable lesson." "And what about me? What happens to the son who was supposed to inherit everything?" I had been expecting this question. "You can earn your place in the company just like anyone else. There are entry-level positions available if you're interested in learning the business from the ground up." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Entry-level?" he finally said. "I'm a Sterling, so am I," I replied. "The difference is that I worked for what I have." He hung up without saying goodbye. He never called again, a year after. The dinner party, I was featured on the cover of Forbes magazine as one of the 40 under 40 business leaders to watch. The article detailed my rise from rejected daughter to aerospace industry, innovator to the CEO of a $300 million conglomerate. The interview took place in my office at the newly renamed Vasquez Sterling Industries headquarters in Cambridge. The reporter, a sharp young woman named Jennifer Walsh, asked all the expected questions about my business strategy, my vision for the future, and my advice for other young entrepreneurs. But the question that stayed with me came at the end of the interview. "Victoria," she said, closing her notebook, "there's been a lot of speculation about your relationship with your father since the acquisition. How would you describe your relationship now?" I thought about the question for a moment. How do you describe the relationship between a father and daughter who have moved from love to rejection to professional respect? "We understand each other now," I said finally. "He taught me that success is the only currency that matters in business, and I taught him that underestimating people can be expensive. Do you regret how things played out?" "I regret that it was necessary," I replied, "but I don't regret the outcome. My father is financially secure, Sterling Industries is thriving, and I've built something that no one can take away from me." What advice would you give to other young women who feel like they're not supported by their families? I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Cambridge skyline where I had built my empire. I'd tell them that the best revenge is success. Not just financial success, but the kind of success that forces people to acknowledge your worth. And I'd tell them that sometimes the people who refuse to invest in you are doing you a favor. They're teaching you to invest in yourself. The article came out 3 months later, and my father called me the day it hit the newsstands. "Victoria," he said, his voice careful and formal. "I read the Forbes article. Congratulations." "Thank you." "I wanted to call and tell you that I'm proud of what you've accomplished. Not just the business success, but the woman you've become." I felt something shift in my chest, a tiny crack in the wall I had built around my heart. "Thank you, Dad. That means more than you know." "I know. I failed you as a father, I know I let my own prejudices and fears cloud my judgment about your potential. If I could go back and change things, I would. I know, I said, but we can't go back. We can only move forward. I'd like to try, he said, if you're willing. I looked out my office window at the city I had conquered, at the empire I had built, from nothing but determination and spite. I'm willing to try, Dad, but things will never be the same. I wouldn't expect them to be, he replied. You've earned the right to set the terms. 2 years after the acquisition, Vasquez Sterling Industries had expanded into 6 countries and employed over 800 people. Sterling Industries, now operating as the manufacturing division of Vasquez Sterling, had become the most innovative component. Manufacturer in the Northeast. My father and I had developed a cautious but respectful working relationship. He attended board meetings, offered strategic advice, and slowly began to understand the vision I had for the company's future. He never again suggested that I was too emotional or impulsive for business. Leadership. Marcus never did apply for an entry-level position. Instead, he moved to California and started a cannabis consulting business that failed within 6 months. He now works as a bartender in San Diego and posts bitter social media rants about how family betrayal destroyed his life. I don't respond to his posts, but I do hope that someday he'll understand that success isn't inherited. It's earned. My mother tries to maintain peace between all of us, hosting family dinners where we discuss business and avoid the past. She's never acknowledged her role in enabling my father's treatment of me, but she's also never questioned my right to make the decisions that saved her husband's company. The 1963 Ferrari sits in my father's garage, rarely driven but meticulously maintained. He's never tried to sell it, never suggested it was inappropriate, never anything but grateful for the gift. I think it serves as a daily reminder that his daughter is capable of things he never imagined. But the real legacy isn't the company or the money or the power. The real legacy is the lesson that I learned and that I hope to pass on, that the people who refuse to invest in you are teaching you to invest in yourself. That the voices that tell you you're not good enough are often the voices that motivate you to become better than they ever dreamed possible. And that sometimes the most powerful form of revenge is simply proving them wrong. I still work in Cambridge, in a corner office that overlooks the Charles River. On my desk, I keep a small framed photo from my MIT graduation me in my cap and gown, standing alone, because my family chose not to attend. Next to it, I keep a copy of the Forbes article that featured my story. Sometimes, late at night when I'm reviewing reports or planning strategy, I think about that 17-year-old girl who sat in her father's office asking for help with college tuition. I think about the moment when she realized that love wasn't unconditional, that support had to be earned, and that sometimes the people who are supposed to believe in you are the ones who teach you to believe in yourself. I think about the choice she made to prove him wrong instead of accepting his limitations as her own. And I think about the quiet satisfaction that comes from building something so successful that the people who once dismissed you have no choice but to acknowledge your worth. Last month, I received a handwritten letter from my father. It was the first personal correspondence he had ever sent me, written on his personal stationery in his careful script. Victoria, it read, I've been thinking about the night you bought Sterling Industries, and I realized that I never properly thanked you, not just for the financial security or the generous severance package, but for teaching me something I should have learned years ago. That strength comes in many forms, and wisdom often comes from the people we least expect to teach. You saved my company, my reputation, and my legacy. More importantly, you saved me from my own prejudices and limitations. I know I can never undo the damage I caused when you were 17, but I want you to know that watching you build your empire has been the greatest education of my life. Your success isn't just a testament to your intelligence and determination. It's a testament to the fact that the human spirit can overcome any obstacle, even the obstacle of a father who was too blind to see his daughter's potential. I am proud of you. I am grateful for you. And I am sorry it took me so long to say it. With love and respect, Dad. I kept that letter in my desk drawer for 3 weeks before I responded. When I finally did, I wrote back on Vasquez Sterling Industries letterhead. Dad, thank you for your letter. It meant more to me than you know. You're right that we can't undo the past, but we can choose how we move forward. I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing not to let the past define the future. I forgive you. Not because you asked for it, but because holding on to anger was preventing me from enjoying the success I worked so hard to achieve. Sterling Industries is thriving. Our employees are happy. Our clients are satisfied. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I have a father who sees me for who I really am. That's worth more than any acquisition. Or any revenge. Love, Victoria. 3 months later, my father suffered a mild heart attack. I spent 2 weeks by his hospital bed, handling both companies from my laptop while he recovered. During those long nights in the cardiac unit, we talked about things we had never discussed before: his own father's expectations, the pressure he had felt to maintain the Sterling legacy, his fear that he had failed as a parent. I turned you into the strong woman you are today, he said one night, his voice hoarse from the oxygen mask. But I did it through rejection instead of support. I created your strength by forcing you to survive without me. Maybe that was the only way it could have happened, I replied. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that I could succeed without anyone's help before I could accept anyone's love. He reached for my hand, his fingers weak but warm. I'm proud of the woman you became, Victoria. Even if I can't take credit for it. You can take some credit, I said. Just not the credit you thought you deserved. He smiled at that, a real smile that reached his eyes for the first time in years. Today, Vasquez Sterling Industries employs 1,200 people across 8 countries. We're developing next-generation aerospace technologies that will revolutionize how the world travels. Sterling Industries, now our manufacturing division, has become the most innovative component manufacturer in North America. I've been featured on magazine covers, spoken at international conferences, and been invited to join the boards of Fortune 500 companies. But the achievement I'm most proud of isn't business success, it's the scholarship fund I established at MIT for young women pursuing engineering degrees. The Victoria Sterling Scholarship provides full tuition, room, and board for students who demonstrate exceptional academic ability but lack family financial support. The application requires only one essay question. Describe a time when someone told you that you couldn't achieve something. How did you prove them wrong? Every year, I personally review the applications and select the recipients. Every year, I'm amazed by the stories of young women who refuse to accept other people's limitations as their own. Last week, I received a thank you letter from Sarah Chun, the first recipient of the scholarship, who just graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering and a job offer from NASA. She wrote, Ms. Sterling, I wanted to let you know that I'm living proof that your investment in young women pays incredible dividends. My parents told me that engineering was too difficult for a girl, that I should study something more practical like business or teaching. Your scholarship didn't just pay for my education, it validated my dreams and showed me that there are successful women who believe in other women's potential. I'm going to work on the Mars exploration program. I'm going to help humanity reach for the stars. And I'm going to do it because you refuse to let family rejection define what's possible. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the most powerful revenge is lifting up the people who come after you. I keep that letter on my desk next to the photo from my MIT graduation and the Forbes article. It reminds me that success isn't just about proving the doubters wrong. It's about creating a world where fewer young women have to prove themselves the hard way. My father fully recovered from his heart attack and returned to work as chairman emeritus. He's become one of the scholarship fund's most generous donors, and he personally mentors some of the recipients. He tells them stories about his daughter who refused to give up, who turned rejection into rocket fuel, who proved that underestimating someone can be the most expensive mistake you'll ever make. She taught me, he tells them, that the people who refuse to invest in you are often teaching you to invest in yourself, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the motivation to prove you wrong. Have you ever had to choose between peace and family? Sometimes the most powerful revenge is walking away. But sometimes the most powerful revenge is staying and transforming everything. They said you couldn't do into everything, but never imagined you could become. My father refused to pay for my college because he didn't believe in my potential. So I bought his company to show him what that potential could achieve. I didn't do it to destroy him. I did it to save him from his own limitations. The young woman who sat in her father's office 12 years ago, asking for help with college tuition, never imagined she would own that office someday. She never imagined she would employ her father, mentor young women, or build something so successful that the people who once dismissed her would have no choice but to acknowledge her worth. But she dreamed it, and she worked for it, and she proved that sometimes the people who refuse to believe in you are giving you the greatest gift of all, the chance to believe in yourself. If my story resonated with you, hit like, subscribe to Silent Revenge, and share your truth in the comments. Because sometimes justice whispers and still echoes forever. The whisper that began in a 17-year-old's heart the day her father said she would never amount to anything significant has become a roar that can be heard in boardrooms, classrooms, and scholarship ceremonies around the world. And that roar is just getting started.